erased. Tonight, we step into the shadows of the forbidden library, where truth was chained, crown. The veil of the Vatican. For centuries, the Vatican has been more than a palace of worship. Beneath its polished surface lies a labyrinth of silence, a vault of manuscripts stretching for miles, holding texts the world was told to forget. Some call it the greatest library on earth, others, a prison for dangerous truth. Why silence certain books? Why would sacred authorities hide gospels, histories and philosophies? The answer is both simple and unsettling: power. A book is more than ink and parchment. It is a weapon. In its words lie questions that can fracture empires, doubts that can unseat kings, and revelations that can loosen the church's grip on souls. To silence a book was to silence rebellion. The first flames. The practice began early. In the 2nd and 3rd centuries, gods in unfamiliar light were branded as dangerous. Manuscripts that whispered of Sophia, divine wisdom in feminine form, were marked as heresy. Texts of ancient mystics who spoke of inner resurrection were condemned. Some were burned publicly, others locked away. Yet fire never erases completely. The whisper of the hidden library. Whispers grew across Europe and the Near East, of monks who defied their masters, hiding copies of forbidden gospels in caves, deserts, or even burial chambers. To them, these words were not dangerous lies, but sparks of a greater, and sparks, once hidden, can smolder for centuries. A world built on what was erased. Imagine the world we live in today. The scriptures, the doctrines, the very image of heaven and hell, all shaped not only by what was preserved, but by what was erased. The forbidden library is not simply a chamber of dust. It is a wound carved into history, and to enter it is to step into the questions they never wanted us to ask. And so, we begin at the threshold, behind this door that were never meant to see the light. Texts that challenge the very pillars of faith itself. This is where the silence begins, and where our journey into the forbidden library truly opens. What if the pages of forgotten books carried truths powerful enough to shake empires, rewrite scripture, and change the very foundation of the church? Tonight, we open those forbidden scrolls, scrolls that rewrote history. The Vatican Library has always been more than a repository of ideas. Within its walls, not every manuscript was placed to be read. Some were locked away to never be seen again, because certain texts, if allowed to spread, could ignite revolutions of thought. They could dethrone kings, dissolve fear, and unravel centuries of carefully built authority. Among these hidden volumes were the so-called forbidden gospels, writings that painted Jesus not as the undogma, but as a teacher of inner freedom, of divine light dwelling in every soul. If these words had spread, church have stood as it does today, or would power itself have shifted into the hands of the people? But the hidden shelves did not only contain gospels, hermetic writings from Alexandria, mystical commentaries on the stars, treatises that whispered that the cosmos itself was a living text, and there were maps, maps of thought, maps of land, maps of heaven, each one dangerous in its own way, each one telling a story of a world larger than the official doctrine allowed. Take, for example, the writings of Origen, one of the earliest and most brilliant Christian thinkers. He dared to suggest that salvation was not eternal damnation versus eternal bliss, but a cycle, a universal return of all souls to the divine source, a belief far too merciful, far too liberating to be allowed. So his works were branded dangerous, some burned, others hidden, yet fragments survived, tucked away in the quiet shelves of the Vatican's secret archive. Or consider the Sibylline prophecies, that spoke of kingdoms rising and falling, not by divine right, but by human folly and greed. They warned rulers not to mistake themselves for gods. Is it any wonder they were chained in silence, their pages gathering dust beneath Vatican stone? These were not just books, they were weapons, weapons of thought, capable of dethroning emperors, dissolving fear, and awakening the people. Imagine what would happen if they were read aloud today. The forbidden shelves contained even stranger treasures. Books said secrets of alchemy, of not only of metals, but of the soul. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes, the Corpus Hermeticum, texts whispering, as above, so below. To the medieval mind, these writings were heresy, sorcery, rebellion, yet to the seeker, keys to a universe alive with divine correspondence. And then there were the maps. Yes, maps, not of treasure, but of places forbidden. Legends speak of charts that traced routes to lands untouched, or to the gates of Eden itself. Some claimed they led to tombs of ancient kings, where secrets of the afterlife were buried. Others whispered they pointed to realms beyond the earthly, invisible kingdoms of angels and archons. Such texts were more than curiosities. They were possibilities. Possibilities too dangerous to allow ordinary hands to hold. The Church feared not only heresy, but imagination. For imagination, when awakened, can build worlds, destroy empires, and rewrite history itself. So these books were hidden, not destroyed entirely, but buried in silence, locked away, waiting for centuries. The knowledge itself was alive, watching seekers would return to open them once more. And the question is, if these books still whisper within the Vatican vaults, what secrets have not yet seen the light of day? The web of censorship. What if the books locked away were not merely dangerous, but keys to entire worlds of forbidden knowledge, mathematics that bent the stars, medicine that healed beyond reason, and of gods no church could tame? The Vatican's power was never built on the Bible alone, but on control. And the greatest threat to that control was not heresy in the streets, but ideas written in ink. To understand this web of censorship, we must step inside the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, the list of prohibited books. For 400 years, it named what you were forbidden to read, not just occult grimoires or gospels, but even the works of philosophers, astronomers, and poets. Among these pages were works that spoke of infinite universes. Giordano Bruno's claim that stars were suns with worlds of their own. For this, he was burned alive in Rome's Campo de' Fiori, his ideas condemned as poison. And yet, centuries later, science proved him right. But not all forbidden knowledge was scientific. Some texts promised a deeper Christianity, and these were far more dangerous. One of the most, a text describing angels descending to earth, revealing secrets of the heavens to mortals. It spoke of a time before Noah, when divine beings taught men sorcery, metallurgy, and the names of the stars. The church buried it, declared it apocrypha, and yet fragments resurfaced among the Dead Sea Scrolls, proving it was once part of a living faith. Even more unsettling were the heretical Gospels, writings where Christ was not a suffering servant, but a teacher of hidden wisdom. The Gospel of Judas, where Jesus laughs at the crucifixion. The Gospel of Mary, where a woman dares to teach male disciples. The Gospel of Thomas, where salvation is not found in ritual, but in knowing yourself. Each one challenged authority. Each one was banned. But the Church's censorship extended even further. It sought to silence not only theology, but memory. Whole chronicles of pagan wisdom, the Hermetic writings of Egypt, the philosophies of the Stoics, even folk remedies of midwives, were condemned as sorcery. By branding them demonic, the Church erased generations tons of knowledge about the body, the stars, and the earth itself. Imagine what was lost. Cures for disease, words that could have united faith and science, spirit and matter. But not all was destroyed, because in the shadows some refused to forget. The web of censorship was never perfect. For every book burned in Rome, another was hidden in a monastery. For every voice silenced, another whispered the words in secret. Knowledge has a way of surviving, and those fragments, scattered, buried, hidden, would one day resurface to challenge the world once more. But what if I told you that some of those forbidden texts may still lie sealed beneath Vatican soil, beyond any scholar's reach? The afterlife of suppressed wisdom. But if the Vatican tried to silence these books, did they succeed? Or did fragments of forbidden wisdom survive, hidden in caves, carried across deserts, with societies, waiting for us to rediscover them? Despite the Church's campaigns of erasure, whispers of these forbidden texts endured. Some monks, instead of burning the manuscripts they were ordered to destroy, buried them. Others, hiding them in earthen jars, locked chests, and beneath floorboards of monasteries. Fragments turned up in unlikely places. Egypt's desert caves, the ruins of Gnostic sanctuaries, even hidden among magical papyri in Greece. Each discovery was like a voice returning from silence, a reminder that knowledge cannot be erased, only delayed. The secret keepers. Across the centuries, secret brotherhoods and mystical schools became guardians of this knowledge. Gnostic communities passed hidden gospels. Medieval mystics encoded forbidden wisdom into symbols, allegories, and even cathedral architecture. It was no accident that so many cathedrals carried labyrinths, zodiac carvings, and esoteric geometries, echoes of the ancient wisdom Rome tried to bury. These guardians understood. If the truth could not be spoken openly, it could be hidden in plain sight. The return of the lost words. In the 20th century, something extraordinary happened. Archaeologists stumbled upon the Nag Hammadi library in Egypt, a buried treasure of Gnostic texts, sealed away for over 1,500 years. Suddenly, the lost voices of Thomas, Philip, and Mary Magdalene returned to challenge the Church's narrative. The Vatican could no longer control the flow of these discoveries. Once translated, the forbidden Gospels spread across the world in print and digital form. What had once been condemned as heresy now drew the curiosity of millions seeking answers beyond dogma. Why it still matters. The Forbidden Library is not just about the past. It asks us today, who decides what knowledge is sacred and what must be silenced? The Vatican tried to erase these books, but their survival teaches us that truth has a way of resurfacing. The library still whispers to those willing to listen. Salvation may not be about obedience to authority, but awakening the divine spark within. Perhaps that is why these texts were feared, because they empowered the seeker to look inward rather than upward. The last chamber of silence. What if I told you that some of these forbidden books were never destroyed, only hidden? That even today, with the Vatican, sealed in vaults where almost no human eyes are permitted to look. The question is, why? What secret could be so dangerous that it must remain in eternal silence? The myth of the Vatican's secret archives. The Vatican holds one of the most mysterious archives in the world. Not a library in the public sense, but a vast underground vault stretching miles beneath Rome. Locked away, hundreds of thousands of documents spanning over 1,000 years. Only a fraction, and even scholars must request permission to see carefully selected pieces. Heavy, cinematic, carrying the tension of secrecy. This is not just history's storage room. It is a fortress of silence, a labyrinth of knowledge guarded by time, power, and fear. Books said to be buried, Their accounts claim lost gospels, banned heretical writings, mystical manuals of magic and alchemy sit here, locked away. Rumors of the Book of Enoch's missing chapters, the Acts of Pilate, suppressed versions of Christ's trial. Even treatises on astronomy and forbidden science by Galileo, Copernicus and others once censored by the Church. If true, then this is not simply a library. It is the tomb of every voice that dared to defy the official story. The motive behind the silence. Why would the Church suppress knowledge? Because knowledge is power, and unfiltered truths might weaken centralized authority. The forbidden books often present a Jesus who laughs at death, a cosmos where humans are divine sparks, and a creation story that challenges Genesis itself. If revealed too early, these ideas might have shattered not just the Church, but entire civilizations built upon it. To guard the flock, they silenced the shepherd's other words, echoes of resistance. Despite suppression, fragments always escaped into the world. The Gnostic Gospels resurfaced in Nag Hammadi in 1945. The Dead Sea Scrolls emerged from desert caves. Even in the age of the internet, leaked manuscripts and digitized apocrypha continue to spread. Suggests that truth has its own will to survive. You may hide a book, but you cannot bury its words. They seep through cracks like water through stone. The final forbidden question. What is left still hidden? Is there a complete Gospel of Mary, a record of Jesus' missing years in Egypt or India, or manuscripts that blend astrology, mysticism and faith into a vision too expansive for the Church to control? If such texts exist, more than question history, they question the very nature of human destiny. The audience is left with the burden of curiosity. The Forbidden Library is more than parchment and ink. It is the shadow of what we were never meant to know. And yet, here you are listening. Perhaps the question is not whether the Vatican still guards these books, but whether we are ready to read them, should they ever be revealed.